1989, and we're in the Potts home. And here's Mom Potts, and over here's Dad Potts. And
yes.
we are going to hear a little bit of their story and have them say what they want to. See, because Althea isn't here to be with us, and so
yeah, I called her tonight, but there was no answer. I don't know where she is. Or
we'll get her at work tomorrow, probably.
Well, let's start with you, Mother.
Now, what would you like me to say?
What
What about my life before I joined the church?
Well,
I had a life before then.
That's right. We want to know a little bit about
Ireland.
Ireland and the customs, particularly at birthdays, and at Christmas, and at Easter, and holidays like that.
Well, it was 6 girls of us, and there was 2 boys, and my mother and father. And we had just an ordinary home.
And you were the oldest, right?
No, I wasn't the eldest. I was the eldest maybe at the time that, no, when I joined the church I wasn't the eldest either. I was, I had a sister named Evelyn. We called her Eva for short. And she was the eldest, and then there was Norman Lloyd. He was a 6-footer and very dark hair, and he was a nice boy. He was very slender.
Mom, Trisha's drinking.
But he died a young man. And then there was Ruby. She was 3rd eldest. She was, I was mixing her up with Jeannie. Jeannie was the one that was burned. And then there was myself. I was the 4th one. And then there was Agnes, Jeannie. And then there was Agnes. And then there was Violet. And then there was another younger brother, who was the youngest of the family, was Douglas. And we lived in an ordinary home, and we had an ordinary schooling, and we had a lot of playmates.
Didn't you say in your ordinary home you also had a lot of fires? I mean, that is,
yeah, we had
a fireplace, and
we had the open fireplace because we had no what do you call it, the heating.
Central heating.
And we had a fireplace upstairs in one of the bedrooms, the main bedroom. We used coal, and we had the wood too, but it was to start the fires. And we used, it was a kind of fireplace downstairs where we used the hobs. And these are things that you can burn, you can have heat in and cook on them. We used to do a lot of cooking on the top of the fire too. And then of course we had a gas stove too that we cooked our food on. And ask me some other questions.
Well, what about the holidays?
Well, Christmas was usually the same here, where they had trees and they had decorations.
Did you have a tree?
Yeah, no, we never had a tree.
You
The big tree was down
Did you
at the
decorate what?
City Hall. We used to have lanterns. We used to have some lanterns that were gaily colored, and we would hang them around. And
Did you put pine boughs on your fireplace? Or?
yes, we hung our socks up, our stockings. And we would go to bed early that Christmas Eve, just as they do here. And we were up a lot earlier Christmas morning. I could remember one time my parents bought me a lovely green china set, cups and saucers. And I was sitting up in the chair that Christmas morning with them on my knee, and lo and behold, they fell
oh no,
off it. And was I very sorry because some of them broken, and it was a sad Christmas for me. I wasn't shouted at or beaten or anything like that for it happening because they realised it was an accident, but I was more sorry that it did happen because it was a lovely set.
I remember you saying that your dad also used to bring a pocket full of candy.
Yeah,
Clap hands for Daddy come home.
that's right. Whenever I can remember when we would give him our candy, and he only smoked a pipe. He never smoked cigarettes. Smoked a pipe. We used to buy him at Christmas the pipes for Christmas, and the what do you call it? Funny how I can forget some of the things that we always bought him the stuff for to put in the pipe. And
Tobacco?
it seemed like every Christmas was the same. He would have new pipes and stuff to put in. But he used to collect the candy we would give him, put it in his pocket. And then when we ran short of something to eat in the candy line, he would tell us to go to his pocket. And we would go there and find all the candy that we had given him and would have a fun time with it, eating it. But we enjoyed our parents. We liked them very well, and they were kind to us, and they sacrificed a lot for us, bringing us stuff, especially at Christmas. And at Halloween, we used to have good times. The neighbours, they were different, you know. They didn't go around from house to house. The children, they would maybe hold parties in their homes with some of their friends. And
Going. You can talk
We're
again.
rolling.
you're all
Where did she leave off? I
You
forgot.
left off at Halloween, how you didn't go
Something
from house to
apples.
house.
And you went to
Yeah,
parties.
and
and
friends of my parents and all would dress up and fancy, or that you wouldn't have even recognized them.
Yeah.
And they would come to the door, and you know, they'd talk with you and tease you and do things and all too, and you wouldn't recognize them till they, you know, they disguised their voices and till afterwards, and it was fun. And they had the apples with strings from ceiling, and you'd have to bite in them with your hands behind your back. You couldn't, you know, hold the apple. And they had a big bathtub where they had money in, small, like sixpence, and maybe a quarter in it, or shilling, and maybe bigger money than that, 50 cents and cents.
What
Here
was your
we
house
talking
address?
Huh?
Was it Carlos Street you lived on?
Yes, off the Shankill Road, which was a very famous street in Belfast. That's where all the
And who were your neighbors? You used to, where did Mrs. Wheeler live in relationship?
Mrs. Wheeler lived in the block below us.
And that was called, do you remember?
Well, it was in the same street, but it was
Oh,
blocks.
Oh, it was the
You know.
she lived
See,
on,
yeah,
she lived on
and
Carlo. And where did Miss Mackelveine live?
she lived quite a bit up, about 5
Who-
minutes or more.
Who was the member of the church who lived by you that your parents knew?
It was Mrs. The Ditty family. They lived about 3 blocks from us, I'd say. And they were nice people, and I was glad they were members of the church because my parents knew them and they knew my parents. Although I didn't know about them, that they were members until I started to go to the church. And it was-
Well, how did you start going to the church? You remember
Well,
what,
I
of
went-
St. Matthew's? Or?
I went, I used to attend little meeting halls at first. My mother used to go there, and it was nice going there. And then I started to go to the Church of Ireland. My mother was a Church of Ireland person, and my father was a Presbyterian. So we went.
Did they go to church regularly?
No, not regular. My mother was a regular person at church. She used to go with other women in the street or just facing us. The Stranick's family were very friendly with us. We used to have a public house where they, went in for drinking. The corner. We knew this family that owned it. They called them O'Neills, and they were Catholics, but they were awful nice people. And whenever there was trouble, especially around the 12th of July, it was, the people would get a little bit, would forget about them, and would say nasty things and do things and tell them to move and all too. And we were sorry they did move one time, but it was a lot of people around it that used to go into it and all, and they treated them nicely and all, and I was sorry to see them leave because they used to call me Dolly. Dolly.
You've been called Dolly and Dora
Well,
and
yeah,
Body
and Dolores and
And Grandma.
yeah, that came a long time after.
And mother.
But our sisters we all went to the same school together. Easter time was another time that was mostly like here. We all, the children were off from school for a week. And and we had, we used to color eggs, and we would go up to parks, and we'd go to the zoo or different places and roll them the eggs on Easter, and we'd all have our new outfits on Easter. It was good. And I used to go to St. Matthew's Church for quite some time before I went
what
to
did
St.
you do?
Stephen's.
Did you say you were in the choir?
Well, in St. Stephen's it was. St. Mark's, Matthew's Church, that's what it was, where my parents were married in. And the funny part of it was they had a day that they were going to be married on, and then invited these friends to stand in for them, the best man and bridesmaid. But they tried to cheat them out of that day. They were going to get married before them and not tell them about it, this other couple. But they learned about it, my father and mother, and they cheated them then. They got married a day ahead of them. So my father had been in the army, he had been a soldier. And I don't know much about his parents because they both had died. They had a brother and a sister, Aunt Aggie, that my sister Agnes is called after. She lived near us, and she had one son, Willie. He was working in this for the government, and he was a very tall fella, very tall. He was well over 6 feet. He would have been done for a basketball player. And that was the only family they had. And he was married himself too. But my father had 17 and a half years service. He was out in Africa. He was in the Boer War. Yes, he was in the Boer War. He used to say that the Boer women were the most beautiful in the world. Their features were so good that he thought they were the most beautiful. And I think it was the Irish were next, the women. Well, he thought that they...
Sure, that's the order it comes in.
Well, they didn't use any makeup or anything as much as some of the other women in the other countries, But my mother was a very nice person. I always thought of her as a lady, what we call as a lady. And I still call her as a...
How old was she when she passed away?
She was 66, I think, when she died. See, when the Second World War came, there was only the few of us left because many of the family had died younger, and none of them had been married, and so we missed them all, and I became the eldest in the family when the eldest ones had passed on, and I had a lot of looking after the young ones and all to do. I can remember when some of us had some of the children's diseases, and they had
Whoopsies.
Sorry,
Dad. I
sorry.
and they had a
Here, you push this. You push the
man
orange.
come to fumigate the house.
specifically-
You know, whenever there was diseases
said-
or anything, there was
do
a
not touch it.
man sent from the health department.
Wait, just a minute, honey. Are you recording or not?
No, if you
That's-
touch
Yes.
it.
No, this is still recording
Well,
through
let's
this whole
pick
thing.
it up. Let's
Let's backspace
back.
it.
Well, how do you put it on pause?
I told you, you push the orange thing.
Already played on. It's still
Well, just
recording.
push the orange right now.
You're talking
If you
about
can't
how
see
you
her.
went under
It's
the
still
bed.
recording.
I know, I just
yeah,
pushed for
that
it to
was, we
record.
were all scared.
Okay, childhood
Look,
diseases.
You can see her.
Poor mom, she's
Hi,
had so
Mom.
many childhood diseases
Tell us
by
about
now.
your 12th of July one more time.
Well, anyhow, we used to go, a lot of girlfriends, and we'd go up and walk with the man, you know. And we would walk with them to the field, they called it, and we had refreshments, we'd buy refreshments and all there, and then they would have talks and things, you know, just from different people. And we would just spend the day there. And
Did they
then
have
we'd come home
fireworks
with
or
them.
anything like we would have? For
Oh
like,
yes, on the night before the 11th, we would all burn, everybody give out the old furniture, and there would be
in-
wood.
Oh,
and,
really?
And
They
have
burn their
all
old
Did they-
bonfires.
did they have tires or anything they could burn or
Yes,
stuff like that?
well, anything
No,
there was
no.
fires
Go
all
away, go
over,
the other way. Go walk around.
over the place. And then we always had a big, we were staying out till late at night, and we would have dances and eats, and there'd be some drinking too. So,
Just some?
I'm sure. some-
Well, I didn't drink, so I couldn't
You
say
didn't?
that.
You never? Have you ever had a drink?
Well, yes, I drank water and lemonade, and all like that.
Oh, come on.
certainly.
Before you joined the church, you never drank?
No, I never drank. I was at a primary party one time when I said that, and this girl made it out that the way I said it, that everybody was drinking, you know, over in Belfast. And I said, well, we would be dehydrated if we didn't drink. But
Well,
anyhow,
who was the first person who introduced you to the church?
well, there was no one in particular. I worked in a place where these people had heard about the Mormons, as they were called then, and I've never used the word Mormon. I've never feel like it was intended to be used. And I never liked to hear anybody even saying Mormons, because Mormon was not the head of the church. He was not the person involved that we were to be. He was involved in a way. He was one of the persons that
Recorded history.
recorded and brought some of the gospel into our lives from his writings. But we.
So
I
you
felt that
prefer
we weren't
calling
we
it the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints?
Yes, that's right. I was a member
LDS.
of that, and I call myself that. And when anybody asks me if I am a Mormon, I say no, because I feel like if I said yes, I'd be adding to it, and I'm not a
Were
Mormon.
you looking at
I
my
am a
church
member of
sign
the Church
right
of
there?
Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. So never ask me if I am a Mormon, because I'm not. No matter how much it means to some people in the church. But in the work, these young friends of ours, Is it all right? He's
Yeah.
making all kinds of faces. I don't know whether I should go on. Where's the girl? Where's the baby? Is she all
Oh,
right?
she's just in there.
Yeah, you
Worried
better.
about the baby.
She's all right with the kids.
Go on.
Anyhow, they told us, and we all thought we would like to go. You know.
Just some girls at work.
Yes, there was some girls at work because they had heard about them and had been to some meetings, and they said they would like to go back again. So I naturally felt I would like to go too. And we were to meet that night. It was on a Wednesday night, and it was a mutual night, which I learned afterwards. And if there's any place that I'd like to go early, it's when I'm going first to place to find out, you know. I don't like to go in late, but they were late coming, and I was
Have
angry.
you ever been late for anything, Mom?
I try not to. I'm
She's an early bird.
I'm a punctual person.
Yes.
And I tried to be, but anyhow, we all arranged for to meet and go there. And while we were waiting on these other young people, it was in North Street there. They had a building down there that they met in. And being a religious meeting, I didn't know much about it, and I felt terrible that we should be late going in. And this, I remember this one fella came, McCulloch, and he came with one of his children. I don't know whether it was a boy or girl. He was a nice man. And he spoke to us, introduced himself and all. He said, "You'll be all right." He said, "You're not that late." And so we all went up with him then into the meeting, and the meeting had already started. And then afterwards there was people come over and introduced themselves and all, and I enjoyed it, but I felt terrible about having to be in late.
Oh, dear.
Going to the meeting and not knowing what to do and what it was all about at first. But I enjoyed the evening. And then we went that Monday night again to Relief Society. And the elders,
What,
So you went to Mutual and then Relief
You
Society?
didn't go
then
to
Relief
Sunday
Society
meeting?
was the following Monday
That was
night. They
Mutual.
mentioned it.
You didn't go to Sunday meeting?
No, because I was going
You're going to
to
your own church.
the church.
You're going to St. Stephen's?
Because I was in the choir, and I was in the club, and I was
Did
a teacher.
You taught Sunday school.
I taught Sunday school, and I was involved in a lot of things in the church. But when they said it was a Monday night, the Relief Society held their meetings on a Monday night. And that was easy for me to go then. And when I went, there was all the women, you know, and the men met too on Monday night.
You
Relief
mean they didn't
Society,
have
but-
family home evening on Monday nights back then?
Yeah, there was none then, at least that I remember about that they talked about. I think it was mostly on a Sunday that they done anything like that, you know. But the way our church was, that when we went on a Sunday, we would go in the morning for Sunday school at 11, and the bells rang, which I missed very much when I came here. Only the chapel bells we used to hear. But and then at 7 o'clock, it was the other
Worship.
services, the sacrament service. You see that we went, and they still do that. They still go. They have the Sunday school in the morning and their sacrament in the evenings too. They keep that in with the other churches, you know. But anyhow, we went that Monday night and met different ones, Relief Society, and they talked and all. And then the missionaries come in, and I hadn't known. Well, I should have said that I went round the steps. We have a place called the Custom House Steps down near where the boats are all come in at a time, you know. We have a big shipping companies down there, and Johnny, my brother-in-law, worked there, and a lot of other people I knew. And so the missionaries used to have boxes, the wooden orange boxes and other boxes that they would stand on and address the people. And there was many other meetings held there too, and there was people selling corn plasters and all on different things. And I remember
how long was it from the time that you first went to
that was about
Latter-day Saint meeting to the time that you became baptized?
well, that was about all. It all came together then. It was I was just in my 20s, and I liked him. I went down and I heard him, and I went with a girlfriend that I went to Sunday school too. She was a teacher, and I remember getting some of the pamphlets. I still have them, of Joseph Smith, you know. And then she had said that he was God. He was a God, you know, and all. And she said, I don't believe that, because, you know, there's only one God. And I didn't say anything about it.
The pamphlet said that.
Yeah,
Joseph
that
Smith
he
a
was
god?
God. Well, we are all gods and things,
Oh,
and all.
in
You
that
know
way.
that,
Oh,
you know.
okay.
And I must, whenever come across it again, show you it. It's that long ago since I've had it. I don't even know where I put it. But anyhow, it was that I enjoyed the meeting, although I wasn't pleased with what my friend said about it, and I didn't argue with her, or I just read it, and it felt good to read. And she didn't think much of them, you know. She told me a lot of different things about them, and I couldn't sort of way believe it. I don't know why. It was just something that seemed to be a part of my life, that when I heard about the church, that it was true. And so then, as I told you about that, I went to the Mutual, and I went to the Relief Society, and then I started to go on a Sunday, and that's how I met these people from down in the same street that we lived, and found out that they were members of the church, and I went with them, I spoke with them.
Was that a couple of weeks after you'd gone to the
Yeah, it seemed just
Mutual?
one followed the other, and I started to go to the Sunday school, and I missed my own church going. I didn't say to my parents that I was going. And I didn't feel I was doing anything wrong, you know. I felt that it was all right for me to miss my own church and go here. And I had an urge to do that, a feeling that it was all right for me to go there. Now, do you want me to stop?
No.
No.
So then, how
Well,
long after this first Mutual did they start teaching you, or
Well,
did they teach you
the
in your home?
missionaries, I didn't go as often down to the Custom House steps again to hear them, but I was hearing them in the branch. It was a small building, you know, branch, and I get very close with the people there, and the missionaries and all. And they were having classes on was it a Thursday night? What I believe. Of investigators, and I went there. I went for about a year, investigating the church before I was baptized.
A whole year?
Yes, and I had other girlfriends. These other friends that we learned from them about the meeting stopped coming. They never came. And this other girlfriend, that her and I were very friendly, we used to come, and she was even baptized. But she got married, and she stopped coming, and I still kept going. I never stopped. And then my parents found out, for the missionaries came to the house and all, you know.
How did they react?
Well, they never said anything against me about it, and nor the missionaries. The missionaries used to come and teach them too, although they were not interested, you know, that way, like myself. But they never prevented me from going.
Huh.
And so...
Well, you were 20, you say?
Yeah, in my 20s it was...
Well, I couldn't have prevented you, could they?
Well,
but
they
they couldn't
couldn't
make it
have, but
miserable for her.
I was the kind of a person who lived by the
Good book.
regards of my parents. I respected them, and I respect, and if they had told me not to go, I would have stopped going, you know. But I told them about the people in the street that went and all, and they knew these people were good people and all. So I don't know whether the Lord blessed me enough in having good parents that they did not object to me going. They never did. And so I went for a year to the investigators' meeting, and then they asked me to get baptized, not like they do now, the missionaries when they go 2 or 3 days, they asked you to get baptized right away.
You know about that, huh?
Yeah, oh yes. Well, when I went over home, they asked Aggie and Jack to get baptized right off, and I didn't even hardly talk to them, you know. One of them, this one missionary, wasn't pleased with him because I felt he was just too much ahead.
Pushing.
Instead of expressing the gospel to them and telling them about them, he was asking them to be baptized, more or less. They used to do that, you know. There was a lot of missionaries done that in the early days of the church. They wanted to baptize you right off.
So tell them what day you were baptized.
And I was the only one to be baptized on the day it was set. It was the 27th of June,
Oh.
the day that Joseph Smith was martyred.
Oh, really?
Well, this was many years after, and it was a Joseph Darling that baptized me, and the next morning in Sunday school it was Joseph Ditty that confirmed me.
My
Three
goodness,
Josephs.
I didn't know that. Wow.
I always tell that around.
Story of the 3 Josephs.
Yeah, the 3 Josephs.
Huh.
Joseph Darling, Joseph Ditty.
And was there a Joseph with a coat of many colors on that?
No, there wasn't, but I got a prize for that. Joseph with the many colors. But anyhow, that's how I was baptized in the church. That was how I knew about it. Almost of my own free will, because these girls abroad me didn't come along, you know, they didn't continue to come. And the other girl got married, and she did come for a while, but then with her being married, she kept away and didn't come at all. And there was a lot had dropped away too. But anyhow, that's how I began with the church, and I never missed it from that time on.
No, we didn't picture. No.
So, how long after you joined the church did you decide to come over here?
Well, I was in every position in the church. Well,
It was
not
after
every
the war
position,
that you
but
come over. Here, there.
it was after the Second World War that
So
I
you
came
were
over
a
here.
member how many years over there?
Well,
before
I
you-
was baptized in
1936.
36, and I'm about
So she came in 1948. She was a member there 12 years.
yeah.
So
I'm about
you
nearly
attended the
50
branch
years.
there 12 years? About 12
Whenever,
years?
most of the time, you were in England part of the time, weren't you? During the war, didn't you go to London?
Yeah, I was.
Yeah.
I was there, but before I really got over to America, I had a lot of tragedy in my life because my mother and father lost their lives,
And your brother.
and my brother. So that I was working in the first aid at the time of the war.
Was that in Belfast always, or was it?
Yes, 4 doctors were our the ones that taught us the lessons and all. And I remember that night I left it. I better stop because the time's going on.
It's all right. Go ahead.
I could. There's a lot to it, and I mean.
Well, we got some time. Go ahead.
Well, anyhow, I started to go all together then to the church. I didn't go to the Church of
Ireland.
St. Stephen's. I stopped going to that because I felt that it wasn't the right thing to do. Going running around the church to one place and going then again to another, and I went round to started to go to it. It was in North Street, and I got into a lot of the things in Sunday school and Relief Society and
You were
Mutual,
primary
as it was called
president.
then. And primary, I became president twice of primary and taught the children then, and it was good. I enjoyed that.
Boy, and
I
over here you were a primary teacher for how many years?
Yeah, oh boy.
Sunday
I
school.
forget how long that was.
Primary
been.
and junior Sunday school.
And I was a teacher and secretary and all in young then Mutual and in primary. Relief Society was a counselor too, and
So
but
Tell us about the day that your parents, you were at the nurse's station.
Well, I had become first aid and learned the many things and all that we were used with, and we we're learning all the things about how to help out. And we had 4 doctors that taught us a lot of the first aid practices and all that we were used with. We had our helmets, and we had our lamps. If the lights would go out, you know, which they did, and then they had we used gas lamps, or no, it was oil, and we had the water was turned off too, and we had to have water. And what was the other? But it
what
started.
were they trying? What was by your house that they would have wanted to bomb?
There was factories.
Well, what type of factories were there?
Well, there were factories. There was
There's
ammunition
shipyards
factories
close.
and
Were you not
shipyards.
far from the shipyards?
Well, it was quite a distance, but
But
we had soldiers established along York Street, which wasn't too far away. They had machine guns and all set up, you know, for them coming over the water from England and Germany. And they
You don't remember what type of factories that they made?
well, my 2 sisters
Did they
worked
make
in,
parts for the ships, or did
well,
they?
that was guns.
They
It
made
was
guns.
mostly guns, you know. And my 2 sisters worked in munitions while I was working in the first aid. And I was working from that time, I was working at from 3 o'clock in the afternoon till 11. I worked a full 8-hour shift with time off for lunch and all. And so we were ready to go at 20 minutes to 11. We were ready to leave at 11. Our shift would be over. When at 20 minutes to 11, the sirens went, and the planes were sighted coming over. And the guns that were along York Street, that's very close to the water, they were firing, and the guns got so red hot they had to stop. And that's how they got over the planes, because they couldn't keep firing, and there wasn't enough airplanes to keep them out. And so there was a lot of places that were bombed. And, did you still want me to go on?
Yeah, go on.
And at 20 minutes to 11, we got the report, and we were in a place where it was bad, because we had a lot of factories, and the soldiers were on the Crumlin Road and all too. And so the bombs were dropping all around us, and people were coming in hurt. And they had to send for the doctors. The doctors worked in their shirt sleeves, the 4 doctors. And they called in the night ones that were coming in, and they called in the day ones. Everybody had to report to the first aid. And it was awful that night. It was just, you were constantly, I was there 18 hours before I got off. And when I got off, there was no home to go to. People were asking me as I was on the way home, where was my father and where was my mother, and I didn't know anything. There was no home there. And I had to go to the police stations, and then we went up to Violet's where Aggie was staying. She was quite a distance away from us. Their home was not touched, and they weren't at home. They were looking for us, and every place was burning, and people were running to and fro, and were just crying and looking for people and wondering where they got to and what had happened. And I had a girlfriend who was working along with me at the time. She lived quite close to me, and we had the shelters built, and all her family went into this shelter that was just outside their home, and they were all killed, every one of them. in this shelter. Her and her brother were safe, and there was another married sister who lived a distance from them, and that was what was left of their family. The mother and father, sisters and brothers were killed.
So how long did it take you to find your mother or find out about your father
Well,
and brother?
As I say, it was 8 o'clock that morning. I come home and they were telling me my mother was in the hospital. That was the first time. And Richard,
No, Douglas.
he had no clothes or anything. Douglas. I made a mistake there. I'm living in two worlds. Douglas was had no clothes on, and he and my mother were in the house along with my father that night. My father had made them seats, brought in chairs and sat them in the coal house, which was below where the stairs were, and this was a good place. It wasn't too bad, and my father was out in. He had made a bed for himself under the table near the window in the living room, but he would come every so often to find out if they were all right. He would go in, and it was at this time that one of the bombs was coming down. He didn't know it, and he had just been into the coal house where my mother and Doug were, and had asked him were they all right, and was making back to his own, but he never reached there. The bomb struck the house, all the whole block of homes round. The coal man, the man who brought the coal to our home, he had his horses there, and the cart that he brought the coal round, and the horse's head was blew off into the ruins of the next house. He had been down just about 10 minutes seeing to the horse to see if it was all right, and had got just to the door of his own home when the bomb went off. Although his home wasn't struck with it, it was shattered and all around about them. He lost his horse and the cart and everything, but his life was saved. And I didn't know where my father was. No one could tell me. And I went to the hospitals, and they showed me bodies and all too. Told me there was no one called Ferris had been brought into the hospital. And then they told me to go to the on the Falls Road. There was a public bath. And they told me to go there and find out about it. So this girl that was working along with me came along, and we went into the baths, and there were soldiers there standing, and the baths had been emptied. And there was bodies all lying with blankets over them. It was terrible to see. And she went over to this soldier and she said that I was looking for my father, and I was told to come here from the hospital. And he said yes, there was cards on many of the bodies to say who they were, whether they were a man or a woman, you know. And he brought us down to this body. And he said to her, should I show her the body, you know? And she says, well, it's her father. She has to recognize if it's him, you know. So he pulled the blanket up from the bottom, and I could see that my father had no features. His face was just a bloody mass here. He had just been hit on the face and just blown down. And that was a terrible thing, and then he covered him right over. So then I had to go to there was a...
Well, how did you know it was your father?
I knew it from his clothes and all. What he had on him, and coming up, they pulled the blanket up, but he didn't keep it over the face too long because he knew it would be a terrible thing for me to see. So it was, I couldn't get over it until I had that special thing that happened to me when I was in the hospital going through the operation. I dreamt of the most hideous faces at night, couldn't go to sleep, and I couldn't get it out of my mind. Do you still want me to go on? Well, I'd be going on, and you need to get the children home. But anyhow, my mother was in the hospital when I went up. I found out that she had been moved. till 50 miles outside. I think that was Lurgan at the time, but I couldn't be sure, and I didn't see her. And she had been told about my father because someone had told her, they'd asked if it was right for her to tell her where she was moved. She wondered that my father hadn't come up to see her, and so they told her. And then she was moved out before any of us could get talking to her, and I had to take Douglas down and buy him some clothes. He had no clothes. And how I found out that it was that I came, when I was coming down that morning, after being in 18 hours, and I was so weary and tired, I went into the somebody called me into a store that was nearby there, and we knew the people, you know, and she said to me, "How's your mother, Dora?" They knew me as Dora there. And I said, "I don't know." She said, "Did you find your father?" And I said, "No, I couldn't find him." At that time, that was before I'd gone to the hospital where they told me to go to the public baths. And then I had to arrange. She said, "Well, I'm sorry to hear about it." She says, "We learned that your father was killed, and nobody knows where he's at." And so she said, we talked and she said, "You should go to the hospitals and find out." To the police station first I went. They sent us to the hospitals, and the hospital sent it down to the public works, where they had drained and put the bodies in there, and that's where I found my father. Well, then I had arranged for the burial, and I had to start work at 3 o'clock that day, and I never got any rest, even though this girl brought me to her home to let me rest. I couldn't, because I had to go up to find what Aggie and Violet were doing. You know, Violet was married at the time, and his mother had to go up there too, and the uncle was up there, and Johnny, of course, was who she was married to, was the son, and Billy had to go up there too, and it was just a full house when we get up there. And so I started to live with this girl, you know, until we started to find a home. But my mother knew nothing about, you know, till she was told about my father. But we couldn't get up to her, and I had to buy the clothes for father and for Douglas, and then I had to go back to work at 3 o'clock that day, and we settled. And my mother, we had to phone her to try and get in touch with her, and I knew I should have been able to go up with her, but I couldn't, because I couldn't leave the rest of them here, and I had to make all the arrangements because I was the eldest at that time. And then I got the funeral arranged for Monday, and I got time off from the first aid. And the first aid place was filled with people. We kept them in there, you know, because there was people hurt so badly we couldn't move them. We sent the worst ones to the hospital that were in bad condition. We had a little baby brought in that it was sitting in the shelter, one of the shelters, with its mother and father, and they were killed, and it had shrapnel in its head and other injuries and all. We had to send it right off to the hospital. I never did ever hear if it ever lived, but its parents were killed in the shelter, and was sitting on the knee of the mother.
Something like it's more killed in the shelters. And
Well, there was those people that we knew, that girl's father.
This
the
is
whole
all
family.
before Pearl Harbor. I was just looking.
Yeah, and
This is in April of 1941.
there was people all over the place, you know. There was people in their homes that were killed, and there was. We were just so. Everybody was so frightened, and then they took the children away, you know, to different places to keep them safe. And they were taken from their parents, and the parents had to stay here because some of them were working, and it was an awful time. It was just an awful time for people, because they could. And there was people. Mrs. Wheeler and all, his house was all blown up and things, and she talked about she went down for to see if she could save anything, and people used to go into the homes and take things. And we had to laugh. She said, I must, she went down to her house one time, and she was living with some friends, and she came down to see her home to see if she could bring anything and save anything. She came one day and she said she had been in and looked around it and found out the home was in a mess, and she had forgot about the door being blown off, and she ran back again to close the door after she came out. She forgot about it, the poor woman. We laughed about it. There was some things, and there was a lot of things that we were looking about. Everything was lying all over the streets, and the soldiers had to be brought in to stop anybody from. Yeah.
Did you ever think of leaving Ireland during that time? Or?
No, I wasn't, because why would I leave? We couldn't find my father for 3 days. He wasn't found. That was Tuesday and it was Friday whenever I came down out of it, and he was found. His body was found. Soldiers had found it, and I had to go up to identify it. And of course, when I identified it, my mother was in the house that night under wood. The beams of the house, were falling around her and Richard, and it was 2 hours. Rich Douglas. Forgive me if I talk, my mind's confused. But anyhow, they had to be, the men had to be sent for to cut the boards and all from it, and she didn't want them to waste their time. The planes were still going over. She would tell them to leave her alone and to go on to other people and save them and all. She didn't want them to be wasting their time with her. But they got her out, and they sent her to the hospital.
How badly was she hurt?
Well, she was, they wouldn't take her to the hospital. She was seen to, and Richard was taken up there, but he was released, and they had her.
Keep saying.
Douglas was released, and he went up to get safe out Aggie and them, and we had a time with finding them because they were looking for us and we were looking for them, and the places were all burning around about us, and the people were all just running to and fro looking for people that they had lost and couldn't find, and there was a lot of people who were just.
Well, we heard enough of the destruction. Well, why don't you tell them about the experience you had in the hospital when you saw your father? Tell them that, and
that's a long time apart.
I know.
My mother,
Where did you move after
we saw
this?
to my father. We buried him and all. And
where's he buried?
He was buried in the Shankill graveyard that we're not allowed to go into anymore. It's closed up because it's filled up, And it was one of the oldest graveyards in Belfast. It was next to that St. Matthew's Church, and they were the oldest at that time. And it sort of way was an awful exhausting time for everybody because nobody got rest, and they were seeing the things, and we had no home to go to, and I had to live with this other girl at work. I went and I lived with her until I found out there was a house and nearby. It was all pretty well shot up and all, but they fixed it up and all too, and we.
What street was that on?
That was in Cumberland Street. And it was just.
Do you remember the house number?
Yeah.
What was it?
76.
Remember.
And it
what was the one on Carlos?
32.
32.
And it was. We went into the house. We got my mother home from the hospital up in Lurgan and brought her home, and we brought. She wanted home.
How long was that?
How long was she in the
She
hospital?
was only about a week or so. She didn't want to stay. She was worried about us.
Douglas wasn't in the hospital. He was okay, right?
No, he was at home, and he had to go up to Violet's too to stay. And then they brought my mother up there because we had no home or anything to go to, and I stayed with this girl. Aggie and them had to travel down to work back and forth from and I was all right because I was nearby where I was working, and so it was a sad time for everybody. But we got this house, and we hadn't even a chair to sit on when we went into it. We had to wait till they allowed us to get in and all too, and see that it was all right, and then it was we had to go out all second-hand furniture because we didn't have money enough to buy it, or we didn't get money to help to buy it either. They felt that they didn't allow you for everything, and some of the things we lost were priceless too. Life. And then they sent Douglas over to London. He had to go to London to help to build shelters and things and all. He'd been over there, he was in such a... And he was... he had a leaking ball, and he had to go to hospital, and he died there. And we had to...
In London?
He died in England.
Was he sent home? Or
He was sent
buried
home in
there?
a coffin, a lead coffin. We had to come home in a boat. And I remember that was an awful for to the hearse went down, you know, and brought the coffin. And it was an awful...
You didn't know he had died before the...
Well, we had heard that he was, because we had arranged for the burial from, or the hearse to go from the body. The matron of the hospital over there was very nice. She sent us a letter, and they were all very nice to him. He had spoken well of them, you know, Douglas, and so away, and she they were trying to be nice, you know, and it was an awful thing to be, and then it was Sunday they brought the body, and it was for that Wednesday I think we had him buried. He was but I better stop because at the time I could go on and on.
You know, no use starting on me. You
No.
need to take that